So I'm Peter Staab. I'm at Fitchburg State University, which is in Massachusetts in the United States. I'll let my other colleagues here introduce themselves as they come on. We need one of these photos where we have the team. Although we haven't been, I don't know the last time we were all in person. It's been many, many years. So anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and start to get going. So WeBWorK, just if people don't know, an open source homework system, very similar to Numbers. We've got about 60,000 sort of problems out there in what we call the open problem library, in both in math and then related fields. We've got a number of translations going on, and hopefully we'll get some more as we continue. And we are in the middle of releasing what we call 2.18 this summer. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to give a little bit of overview about what's going on with WeBWorK. I guess the second bullet point was already just mentioned for Numbers. We got LTI 1.3 in the code base. It has been.
Stop you there. Sorry, we can't see your screen. I'm not sure if.
Oh, you can't see my screen. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That is interesting. Why is not your screen sharing is paused? What do I have to do? Resume share. Ooh, that is not doing anything. Let me stop sharing and start again. Let's see if that'll help. That looks better. Looks better. Great. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so as I just mentioned, we do have this LTI 1.3 that just made the code base, and we have been testing it with various LMS. We've done a few tests, but we need to do some more tests as well. We've improved the accessibility of the whole system. That's been just a continuing improvement over the years. One of our big things that nobody's going to notice is switching the back end. We used to use mod Perl, which hadn't been touched in 12 years, 13 years, something like that, to a modern, completely Perl-based web server called Modulicious, and it gives us a lot of flexibility from the coding side of things. It improves a lot of stuff. The stuff that you will see, again, we've been just working on the sort of the general UI, which you'll see this in a little bit. Glenn and Drew are going to cover some demo stuff. The PG editor, that's the problem editor, has been completely revamped, and Glenn will talk about that. We've got a statistics page for general sets or users, and that's been updated and improved. Hard copy generation, so producing PDFs, has been completely rewritten and improved. Essay answers, which we also call basically like short answer things. We've always had the ability of inserting like LaTeX, but many students don't have that ability. And there's a little tool called MathQuill that will let students embed that in quite a bit easier. We've changed gateway quizzes, which are sort of version tests, over to a name called tests. Very much more generic. They sort of basically work the same way, but I think it will, instructors will probably be a little bit more used to using that as well. Done quite a bit more inline help on in the tool itself. So when you're looking for things instead of Googling, there should be some stuff as well. And the last thing that I want to show is we've been working on producing sample problems and documentation. We used to have a wiki. Well, we still do. Oops. But I wanted to jump over to, did that switch screens? Say documentation home? Yep. Okay. So this is some things. I'll just walk through some of these. There's a bunch of ways of categorizing these sample problems. So here's one let me take, say, differential calculus, and I'm going to do a difference quotient here. So the way that this is similar to what we used to show, but it's much more, it's easier to update and so forth. This is the actual code. on the left, just broken out on different sections. There's nothing distinguishing that. And then we have various explanations on the right to explain things. We can now, there's a link here to just download the problem file if you want to include this in your code. The other nice thing about this is this one actually has a macro here, so I can click on it, automatically detects there's a macro file, and I can go and find more information about the macro directly. And this is all automated. So, all right, I'm going to hand off to Glenn then. So I will stop sharing, and it's all you, Glenn.
All right, so I'm just going to give a demo of the changes to the PG problem editor. So a lot of what we have done is focusing on problem editing, trying to make that easier for authors. Can everyone see my shared screen?
Yep, you're good.
All right, so first of all, you can access the problem editor in several ways. Of course, if you're in a problem, there's the edit button that's been there before, although it's moved. It's up by the, if you're an instructor, the problem text or file name is typically shown. That button's by that now instead of down below. It's also accessible from the homework sets editor. And this isn't in yet, but we're going to have a direct link to the problem editor for starting to edit new problems. That's still being worked on by the developer on that. When you enter the editor, oops, I'm not signed in. You'll notice a new layout. Previously, all you would see is the code mirror editor, which contained the text, the code of the problem, and then the forms down below for things you would do to that. Now the problem is automatically rendered when the page loads in a left-right layout, similar to what Andrew has devised for the standalone editor, renderer, if you've ever used that. We have also, as Peter mentioned, done some improvements on the help. So previously, there was a question mark icon down here in the assist site navigation. We found out a lot of users didn't know that was even there, or that was page-specific help. So we've moved that up by the title to make that more prevalent. And instead of opening in a new window, it opens in a dialog. We've also done some work on updating this. Many of us have forgotten about these, and as such, that help was rather outdated, not reflecting changes we've made to the user interface in the past several years. The server that we have hosted this PGML help lab on at Rochester now is quite unreliable. If you're using previous versions of WeBWorK and you click on that, you might notice that just gives you a broken link. So we've changed that. That's now built in to the server. That's directly on your server if you install WeBWorK, and that problem will work, plus some updates to the problem itself. For the editor itself, instead of reloading the page when you make changes to the code, you can click View Reload, and it just reloads the problem itself, not the entire page. You can also, if you make changes to the code, and just click on a Submit button, those changes will automatically be shown up in the code, in the rendered problem. This was actually added in the last release, but last year I ran out of time and didn't get to this. We've added some things you can do to customize the appearance of the editor. For instance, themes. I don't like these light themes. I like dark themes. So you can switch your theme for the editor if you prefer a darker theme. Key mappings. I typically use VIM, so I prefer that instead of the standard editor type theme. And once you make that change, it will be prevalent in the browser you're using. So if you leave the problem editor and come back editing another problem, those changes will persist. Another thing that has been kind of tedious to do, and a lot as such has been not well maintained by a lot of problem authors is hard copy generation. Previously, if you wanted to generate a hard copy for a problem, you could only do that from an entire homework set. So you could go into the homework set you've added the problem to, generate the hard copy for the entire set, but that's kind of overkill if all you want to do is look at your one problem. So that's been added directly to the problem editor, and you can click generate a hard copy and see that one problem in hard copy instead of the entire set. This is particularly useful if there's a bug in a problem that causes hard copy generation to fail, and you can isolate the problem a little easier by going through the editor. Let's see, so we've also changed some of the tab names down here. Previously, this was, instead of save, it was update. Instead of save as, it was new version. Just more consistent with standard file menu names. On the save button, previously when you save, it would overwrite your file on the server, and then anything you had in there previously would be gone. We've added the capability of creating backups and incremental backups even. So when you save changes you've made to the file, if you have create backup checked, then it will create a backup of the previous version and save the changes into the original file. If you go to the revert tab, it will show any backups you now have. So we have a backup that I made, of course, moments ago. You can manage your backups, delete them. If you save again, you'll see a new option. If you don't want to keep a whole long list of backups, you can start deleting the old backup, or don't make a backup at all. But, this will delete the oldest one and create a new backup, so sort of shifting down the queue of backups. Or you can keep that going and save again. Once you have multiple backups, of course, they'll all show up here. You can delete any or restore from any of those. Go back to our original version of the file. Don't have, oh, that's not the original. There we go. I shouldn't have it. Yeah, got rid of the hello that I had. I think that covers all the things I wanted to mention here. Oh, there's also been some improvements on the syntax highlighting. So previously, syntax highlighting worked well for the old style PG coding, which we actually don't want problem authors to use anymore. We'd prefer they use the PGML syntax, which generally is nicer. The problems look like a lot more like what they're going to appear as. Instead of having all these pair things for line breaks, you can actually use a line break. The syntax is just nicer in general. It leads to more uniform formatting of problems in the resulting output. So the syntax highlighting for encoding with that has been improved, and some other things as well. So I think that covers my portion. So I'll turn this over to Andrew to finish this off.
All right, let's see. So I'm going to take you through some of the updates to the the PG code. So this is what's supported in problems. So new developments as far as problem authoring goes. One of the first ones I want to show here is a problem that uses randomized names. So what looks like, just like a regular WeBWorK problem underneath, if we take a look at what's being used here, we have a random person library that now can be loaded to generate random names, and those random names have associated pronouns, and we can conjugate verbs relative to their pronouns. So in this problem, we have P1 is our first person, right? And we get pronouns for that person and conjugate the verb cut. So if he cuts from the ribbon, he then cuts off more. And if we re-randomize, we have different names, both for P1 and P2. Arturo and Don, Shayla and Nayeli. So this is just a way to, Peter, where you grabbed these from a multiple years of birth statistics across.
Yeah, I mean, the Social Security Administration here in the US has like the top 1,000 baby names in a given year. So we grabbed 18 years ago. So we grabbed 2005 to give basically what might be more typical names for college students, which is our big population that we're doing. But
We just keep updating it every year, pull another year, and
I guess we can do that. Yeah.
okay. So in addition to that, the next problem we have the graph tool, which allows for a whole variety of different questions that can be asked of students in terms of graphing. This one here asks students to graph on a number line to graph an inequality. So there are several tools here that can be made available. There's a lot more than just this that can be made available. You only want to make the tools available that are relevant to the problem, obviously. But here we have the ability to graph an interval and to include or exclude our points. And all of this is keyboard navigable. And you can see as I click on one of the tools, I get instructions for what to do with this endpoint. So by dragging the mouse, I can place it wherever I'd like. Here I want X, less than or equal to 3. So after I place it, I can then drag my second point, or I guess, I can use my keyboard. You can't see that, but I'm using my keyboard instead of my mouse. And if you go all the way to the end, you grab all the way, you shade all the way to infinity. We can, by selecting the points, choose whether or not to include or exclude, or clear all my objects and start over. Let's see. As far as building the graph tool, pretty straightforward. You specify the type of solution and the solution, and you give it some options. How big do you want your number line to be, for example? Here we're enabling the number line display. And so pretty straightforward, just to throw this in there. When you input the answer blank for an object like this, instead of getting an answer blank, WeBWorK just knows, okay, I'm going to throw the graph tool in here and supply it with all of these options. So pretty remarkable what we've got here with such a very limited amount of code required. Pretty pleased with that one. Here we have some visual libraries for visualizing three-dimensional graphs. This one, the problem isn't, we don't have anything automatically graded here, but everything is looks pretty good. We get elevation cuts in all our directions. We can see the points here. And as was mentioned with essay responses, sometimes we ask students to, describe their work, their process in solving problems. And when you provide just a big old text box for students to type in, sometimes they want to type math. They don't really quite know how to do that. I mean, you could always just type it plain. And if you understand LaTeX delimiters and things like that, students could manage that on their own, but we've got a little bit of support here. It looks like this is the graph of, and I'm like, well, I want to enter some math now, and I'm not really sure how to do it. There's a button down here that gives students kind of a little sandbox to type out what they would like to see, what they'd want to put in their response. And in this box, everything is rendered live. So we see x squared. If I wanted, I guess I don't really need fractions here, but I can get them if I want. And when I'm done with what math I want to put in my answer, by just clicking insert the code of that will generate the LaTeX for us, gets inserted automatically. And I guess so students could learn what to type for themselves if they so desired. And so we could see in the answer preview, we get the LaTeX here. And as with all essay answers, those have to be manually graded. We have linear inequalities now supported. So instead of strictly equations, or we can test out answers that are inequalities for linear relations. So if we have a point through 3, 0 and 0, 2, that looks like what, 2x plus 3y. We want to include the origin. And yeah, okay. So yeah, just something that instructors wanted to be able to ask about, and we kind of gave them a library to make this a little more straightforward. So the linear relation, again, just defining one now is as straightforward as just using a string that describes the linear relation that you want to the students to input. We've always supported checkbox answers in, well, always. We have for a very long time supported checkbox answers in WeBWorK, but it was not always very easy to actually write one for a problem that is as simple as a multi-select question. The way that those problems were actually written was nowhere near as simple as, say, pick one. So our multiple choice questions were pretty easy to write. The multiple select problems were not. And so we have updated the multiple select problems to kind of match the same kind of structure when they are written. So an array of answers, and which answers do you want to be marked correct? If you want to shuffle you want randomly ordered choices, you can nest those in another layer of arrays, and those will be shuffled, and this will leave none of the above as the final choice. If we re-randomize, the other options will shuffle around, but none of the above remains at the bottom. And we also now support like a horizontal spacing for these checkbox if you don't want them stacked. Just by giving a separator, it will space them out. And along with the theme of multiple choice, sometimes when an instructor wants students to answer a multiple choice question, it's more complicated than just pick one of these answers. For example, here we have two possibilities, AB and BA. Matrix multiplication doesn't always work the same when we commute. So in asking students, we may want them to have a choice, that is, this answer doesn't exist. But if the answer does exist, we want them to say what that product actually is. So we now have multiple choice answers that support additional student input along with the multiple choice component. Yeah, I think that is our last of the problem updates.
Okay, thank you all for the update. It was really interesting. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Matrix chat. There's a link in the Zoom chat there. We have one from Christian. So Christian asks, is everything still in Perl? And is there any scope for doing parts of the editor backend in a language with more well-developed web frameworks? Or do you think there's no need for that?
Everything is still in Perl. The PG processing has to, like, all of our objects, all of our answer comparison, like the real guts of the problem generation is all in the back end of Perl. One of the things that I would like to see is there's another project that kind of does this called Pretext, that writes that supports the writing of WeBWorK content in kind of an XML format, which, again, if you're going to support XML format, then you might as well support just about anything else. But I would like to see a different front end for perhaps generating this content. We do see, as in Peter's example, the kind of the breakdown of how a problem could be segmented. And so in some kind of structure that would be in charge of organizing those sections and kind of converting them then into strictly PG. Yeah, so the problem code itself has to be Perl, but that doesn't mean we can't maybe shim over the top of it with something else.
A front end that could,
Yeah.
WYSIWYG editor.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I do really like how problems are created in numbers. I'm very jealous.